All right, well, it's a really, really beautiful morning. It's got to be, what, 45, 50 degrees right now? So I figured we'd do something a little different. So I got this from BiBury. They sent me it a couple weeks ago, and I've wanted an opportunity to test it. So we have this autumn olive tree. Now, I have very familiar with them in the past. This is a fruit-bearing tree that is actually invasive species here in the United States. But you can eat the berries and they're pretty tasty. I also have this path that I've been wanting to clear out for a while, and we're gonna be testing a lot of different products to be part of that. Some coming up real soon. But I figured we'd go ahead and test this out. All right, so what this is basically a folding trimmer with a huge pair of shears. It also has a saw, it has blades in it, and a couple other unique features that are specific to the type of activities you would use with it. Now, I don't have a lot of bushes in my yard, but if you're a woodsman and you're an outdoorsman, having a tool like this can actually be quite convenient, because then you don't have to swing an axe or so on. And if you don't necessarily want to cut a tree in a way that it can't grow back as well, it's really, really good for that, and you'll get a nice clean cut. So we're just gonna use this to trim it up, and I'm gonna do a bunch of it. That way we can see how well the 3CR blade holds up. Looks pretty good right now. I tested it before we started this, and it's very, very sharp. So we'll have to see how this goes. Now, of course, I had to try the tool on the thickest branch I plan on cutting right off the bat. And I realized right away that you probably shouldn't try to use this on anything that is above, I don't know, between 1.5 centimeters and 1 centimeter. It just doesn't have the leverage, it seems, to be able to make that clean cut. So there is a limitation to it. You're gonna need to cut smaller branches for sure. So the first thing I notice is that when using the shears, I don't have any rolling, but I can definitely see the metal impacting the blade here. I'm not exactly sure what's going on. I'll have to play with it and see some more. I don't see any rolls per se. It's still quite sharp, but it is working. Now, the one thing I want to do is I want to test out, well, you have to lock it, I should mention. I want to test out this saw. I don't have high hopes for the blade, but the saw looks pretty aggressive. So what I'm hoping is this will help me with the larger branches. The two items that are important here, of course, are the shears and the saw. I'm not too concerned with having the blade. This is such a soft steel, I really wouldn't recommend depending on it in any way, shape, or form. But I do want to see if the saw will cut. So let's get a closer look and we can actually see how this works. Now this whole area is kind of a bit of a mess, and it hasn't been maintained in a long time. So this tree had a bunch of deadfall and now it's just growing wonky doodle. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is cut it down towards the end and try to get it to grow straight again so that it doesn't incur on the path, but also that it can actually survive, because it won't survive in the current iteration. So we're gonna try the saw and see how well it works. We'll see. Actually, that cuts pretty well. You know what I think it is? The teeth on this are bigger than something like the Leatherman. And I think what it is for live trees specifically, this is going to be pretty good, which is what you're using it on mostly. So I think the rest, I just have to trim and get it back up. But otherwise, I think it's in pretty good shape. What I have noticed with these trimmers though, is that, I like the lock, by the way. The lock is really cool. Half inch, anything over a half inch, like I think half inch even is too much. Probably around a centimeter, which is a little bit more than a quarter of an inch. I don't think I would go much further than that. So limited usefulness, right? But if you have thin branches, you don't necessarily want to be swinging a knife through it per se. And if you're trying to save the tree, you don't want to leave little pieces of wood hanging. You want clean cuts. Even better if you have some treatment you can actually put on it so that it doesn't, you know, get disease and that kind of thing. If I did, I would put it on. In fact, I might go get some. I'm not sure this tree is necessarily savable. You can see just how gnarly it's gotten. Yeah, it may not be savable. In fact, now that I'm looking at it. So you know what I'm actually doing? I'm actually gonna take the saw and I'm gonna see how far I can push it, because that's a pretty serious stalk. If I can cut through that, then I'm pretty happy with a $12 multifunctional item. Let's try that. All right. Yeah, I don't think this tree will survive. Just the way it's being grabbed by all of these vines and stuff. So I'm gonna go ahead and actually get to cut it down. Now, I would certainly not ever use a saw this small if I was being serious. But we're just trying to test to see how well it cuts. So this is going to be a painful process. I may speed it up a little bit. You know what I am noticing though? I don't think it tapers. And what I mean by that is at the teeth, it's supposed to be a little wider than it is at the back in order for it to not bind up. I'm feeling like I could feel more resistance than I should. Also, not having this lock, it's going to be a problem. All right. Well, it did do it. It did do it, so that's a pretty significant percentage of the blade. The blade is still, no, this blade's still in good shape. Didn't bend, that's important. So obviously I have a lot of cleanup to do. That's always right, that's always what happens. But the good news is it looks like this path's gonna be a little bit more clear. And it also looks like we now have a spot for this particular tree over here to grow properly, because it's still straight enough, it can take off. So we were able to get rid of the dying tree. We'll clean this up, and the autumn olive that we trimmed up, we're gonna collect those berries and eat some, because they're pretty tasty. So what do I think about this little tool? I think the best part is that it's cheap. Is what it comes down to. Because, speaking of that, where did I put it? Put it in. Ah, got it. So it's cheap, it's light, it's easy enough to carry, and the saw works. And the trimmer is decent. I'm not sure if it justifies its weight if you're taking it into a backpacking scenario, but obviously for something like gardening, this is going to be pretty sick, because you have a lot of the functions built in, an inexpensive tool that's basically the same price as a cheap trimmer that you would buy at a Home Depot, but it has a bunch of extra benefits, like having that saw as a backup plan, having the blade as a backup plan. I would not necessarily recommend the blade. It just feels too soft to me, but it's a backup, right? So yeah, this is the BiBury trimming tool. Very neat little thing. Check it out. Just a major word of caution here. I am very aware of what this is. This is something I've grown up with. I have very confident in my ability to identify it. Under no circumstances should you attempt this based on this video alone. Do your research and make sure that you know whatever you're consuming is 100% edible, okay? For every one edible red berry off a tree, there's got to be like 7 or 8 at least that are poisonous and could kill you. So please be careful. Just a word of caution. You guys have a great day.